Well, thank you for having me. I was happy to be able to join you for Mass. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay, and I thought the readings from Hebrews was great. Do not neglect hospitality. You all must have read that before today because you're a very hospitable group, so thank you. So when I first walked in, I was greeted by some lovely people who got me into the right place, and then a lovely lunch. So I'm very happy to be here. My first time, so I don't think it'll be my last time because I work right down the street at the cathedral, so this is actually a pretty easy place to get. Before I start giving you my comments, I just want to introduce some people who are very special to me. First of all, my wife, Suzanne, if you would stand up. And then two of my colleagues who I work with at the diocese, Dr. Cristina Arellano, who runs CHRISTI Academies, our school. Then Anthony Valtaggio, who JP mentioned, who is works with me at the Orange Catholic Foundation. And then just reach out to a couple of my friends, Sam and Billy. Thanks for coming. So let me just tell you, give you a bit of background on me. Not that it's that interesting, but when you understand a little about who I am, it's even more amazing as to why I'm doing what I'm doing, because there's no reason in the world that I ever should have got a call from the bishop to ask me to do what I'm doing. So I basically grew up in Chicago, and that's where my wife and I met each other.
North side? South side?
No, west side.
West side.
Yeah. So I grew up in Chicago, moved out here about 32 years ago, and I came out here to work for a home building company because I wanted to make my fortune in the real estate development here in California. So I started doing that. I worked for a company for about 15 years, and then in 2006 went out on my own. I had the very good fortune to do that because that was when the market was crashing, and I was kind of in the right place at the right time to go buy a bunch of land, and we did that. So we bought a lot of land for about 10,000 homes. And so we kind of bought that and repositioned everything and got that sold. So that was a pretty lucky for me. And then about, that market kind of, opportunities ran out. And so then I kind of got back in the home building business again. So I have a company right now that we build about between 500 to 1,000 homes a year. So I still have that company, and I do that on Wednesday afternoons. I kid you not. And the other 4.5 days of the week I'm at the diocese working with Cristina and Anthony. So it's really strange. And so in the fall of, so I'm busy. My wife and I have 5 children. Our youngest is now a sophomore at Boston University, and our other 4 children all live on the East Coast. So we got a lot of family activities, and the good news for us is our oldest daughter is going to get married in September, so I get to be father of the bride, so I'm experiencing all that anxiety. So in the fall of 2022, I got a call from the bishop who asked me to come be the executive director of the Orange Catholic Foundation, and I really had no interest in any desire or even knew why I was even getting a call. I mean, why would anyone even think that I would be someone to run the Orange Catholic Foundation? I had no involvement in the Orange Catholic Foundation. I didn't want any involvement with the Catholic Foundation. I quite honestly didn't really know what it did. But when the bishop called and I talked to my wife's like, well, you're not going to do this. I'm like, no, honey, don't worry about it. I'm not going to do it. And then 2 weeks later, I prepared a resume, which I had not done a resume for 30 years, but I prepared a resume, and I said, I'm just going to send this to them. They're not ever going to hire me. Don't worry about it. She's looking at me like, what's going on here? So I sent the resume in, and then you can tell I got the job because here I am. And I really, I don't want to preach to you, but I think I do need to be honest and explain to you what I think happened is about 4 years ago, I decided to try to change my life, and I thought the one thing I would do is I try to go to daily Mass. And so I'm not perfect at that, but I probably get to Mass maybe 5 days a week. And I think it was I know what it is now in hindsight. I know that it was, going to daily Mass and being with our Lord and the sacrament of Eucharist completely changed my life. And I think that's what made me open to basically changing my life and really reprioritizing everything I do to quit focusing so much on making money and being in business to what can I do for others through the Orange Catholic Foundation, and now particularly through CHRISTI schools, which is what I want to tell you about. So, people always say, oh, listen to Hallow, listen to Father Mike, do this, do that, and I think those are all good things to do, but my personal testimony to you is if you only are going to do one thing, go to Mass first, and after you've gone to Mass, then listen to Hallow, then listen to Father Mike, but go to Mass first. That's the first thing you got to do, right? Because Father Mike and Hallow, that's not being with our Lord. So there's my gospel. How did I do? Did I do okay for the middle sermon?
Right on, brother.
Okay. All right. So I really do think that the Holy Spirit brought me to the Orange Catholic Foundation. And what really intrigued me about the opportunity was 2 things that had been on my heart. And one is I had paid a lot of attention to Catholic education. I never went to a Catholic school in my life. I'm a convert. I converted about 20 years ago, but my wife's been a cradle Catholic and all. I paid a lot of money to send my kids all the way through Catholic schools. But personally, I'd never gone to a day Catholic school in my life, but I was on the board of JCR Catholic High School for 11 years, and I was the chairman of the board down there for 7 years. And so it's through that I'd get these reports every year from the diocese, and that would show kind of what was going on in the elementary schools. And every year, the enrollment would just go down and down and down. And I kind of wonder, like, why doesn't anyone paying attention to this? Does anyone even know that the enrollment's going down? Does anyone even care if they did know? But I just saw this information, and JCR was doing fine, and it wasn't my responsibility or anything for me to do to go deal with the Catholic elementary schools, so I just knew it was there, but didn't do anything about it. But the bishop asked me, he said, I really want you to get involved in our elementary schools, and I really want you to try to raise money because they need money. So I was interested in that. And the other thing that I was really interested in is, as a real estate developer, I would do a lot of work on understanding demographics. And one of the things I learned is that those of us in this room who are 55 and over, which is a few of us, we control almost all the net worth in this country. And the only thing that I know for certain is probably over the next X number of years, we're not going to be here, and all this net worth is going to go from our generation to the next generation. And the numbers are absolutely staggering. I mean, I've seen different numbers, but it's somewhere between like 120 to 130 trillion dollars of net worth is going to go from us to the next generation over the next 20, 30, or 40 years. And the only Catholic institution that I saw that actually had a strategy to even think about that was my kids went to Notre Dame. And so Notre Dame's, whether you like them or not, the one thing they do really well is they raise money really, really well. And so Notre Dame has a really great strategy to go after this transfer of wealth from generation to generation, but nobody else is doing that. And it really frustrated me, and I didn't know why no one else was doing it. What Catholics do is we pass the offering plate, and we're always asking for money, but we ask for it completely wrong, because most people's net worth is not the cash in their pocket, or it's not the money in their checking accounts. It's the stock they own, it's their real estate, it's their IRAs, it's their company. And we never ask for that, but Notre Dame does, which is why they're so rich. We're asking, for the amount that you've got in your pocket when you show up to church, or we're asking, for what's in your checkbook. So I'm like, we need to change the way we ask for money. We shouldn't ask more, we should just ask better, and we should ask more effectively, more efficiently. And so those two things, my interest in Catholic schools and my interest in changing the way the Catholic world looked at raising money, were the two things that when the bishop asked me, I said, yeah, this is what I want to go do. And so as JP said, I've been there for about 2 years, and it's been the most amazing journey. So I want to kind of just walk you through kind of what we're doing, because it is phenomenal the way the Holy Spirit is working in the Diocese of Orange. And it's kind of like the best kept secret right now, because this stuff has just been in the, kind of in the works for the last couple of years, but it's all going to be coming out now in the next year, so you're going to hear a lot about this. So when I first got in there and started saying, I've got to raise money for Catholic schools, I'm like, well, I need to know what I'm asking for. So I spent a lot of time, almost like a consultant, really trying to understand what exactly was the situation with our elementary schools. And really, it was a tale of two cities. You had the haves and you had the have-nots. Some of our schools are doing exceptionally well. Our Lady Queen of Angels in Newport Beach, St. Edward's in Dana Point, Sarah Catholic down in Costa Casa. They're doing great. They're bursting at the seams. You can barely get your child in there unless you know somebody. There's waiting lists to get in those schools. Then you got the other side, which was schools in Santa Ana and Anaheim, and most of the schools all the way up through North Orange County and La Habra. Just a tale of devastation and neglect. It's just like, to this day, it makes me very sad to see what happened. And so in that geographic area, we have 8 schools that have been closed over the last 20 years. And so when a school got closed, people knew a school got closed, but then they forgot about it. And so when I went to the bishop and said, Bishop, do you know that we closed 8 schools over the last 20 years? I mean, they kind of know, but it's not like they're thinking about it every day. And I asked one of the educators, I said, well, when you close a school, what happens to it? And they looked at me like, what do you mean? Like, well, what happens to it? What happens to what? I said, well, there's a building. What happens to the building? And they go, I don't know. We don't know what happens to it. It's just there one day and then it's gone, and no one even knows what's happened to it. So I'm like, this is like befuddles me. So we start looking at this north central area. And not say every school up here is struggling. Like St. Juliana Falconeri is doing quite well, and there are a lot of schools that are doing well, but the schools in Anaheim, Santa Ana are just struggling. La Purísima here in Orange is struggling. You have the 8 closed schools, and so what we did is we went to Bishop Van, and Bishop Van allowed us to do this and encouraged us to do it. We formed a new school corporation called Pax Christi Academies. And so what the bishop did is we took 5 schools, 3 in Santa Ana, St. Joseph, St. Anne, and St. Barbara. one in Anaheim, St. Justin Martyr, and then one here in Orange, La Purísima, and put those under Pax Christi. So what does that mean to be under Pax Christi? Well, the traditional governance model in a Catholic elementary school is the principal reports right to the pastor. And in some places that works really well, but for whatever reason, it didn't work so well up in North and Central Orange County. It works pretty well in Newport Beach, it works well in Dana Point, and it ain't working too well up here. And so I said, Bishop, if we don't change something, the results are gonna be the same. We're just gonna continue to close schools, so we have to do something different. And so the bishop was open to changing the governance model. So under canon law, that means that he had to issue a decree, which he did a year ago, which formally changes the reporting responsibilities so where the principal now reports directly to the president, and the president reports directly to a governing board of directors. So it's very much a corporate governance structure. So the board of directors, mostly lay people, although Father Angelo, our vicar general, is on there, and a few other people from the diocese, they have responsibility to oversee the president, and that's Dr. Christine Arlina, who I'll introduce you to in just a minute. And then she now directly oversees the principals. The pastors are still involved in the pastoral and the sacramental aspects of the school, but they're no longer involved in the management, the financing, the day-to-day activities. Because really what it was is every one of these schools, with the old historical principal to pastor governance model, just think of like 5 McDonald's. Everyone has their own menu. They've got their own HR policies. They've got their own advertising. I mean, nothing was the same. They seemingly don't even talk to each other. The curriculum is different. Everything they do is just completely different. And so what typically happened is you get these principals, which usually are teachers who are really good teachers, and then a principal leaves, so now they do principals, so they put a teacher in the principal's role, and this poor principal's never been taught what to do, and all of a sudden, that principal now has got to figure out how to market, how to do a budget, how to do curriculum, how to manage parents. This is where the failure comes from, and so that's what happened. And so this governance model was huge. And so as a fundraiser, I knew that in order for me to go to my friends and to raise money, there were 3 things that I had to be able to represent to the people that I was trying to raise money for Pax Christi. One is I had to be able to tell them that it had a strong mission. So I'll tell you about that in a second. 2, I had to be able to tell them that it had strong management and it had an opportunity, it could be successful. It was going to be a well-run organization, good mission, good management, and 3, I had to say, and there's going to be transparency. You're going to know what happens to your money. We're going to give you audited financial statements. We're going to give you a report, and you can make your own judgment after the first year if you give, if you ever want to give again, but we're going to tell you what's going on, mission, management, and results, right, and transparency. So that's what we did. So the first time the board got together, it was pretty easy for us to figure out our mission. And just to summarize it for you, there's a lot of words to it, like all these things, but like the 4 things that I can remember is our mission: faith, intellect, character, and citizenship. So clearly the primary purpose of a Catholic school is faith. We're in the business of creating saints. We want these children to go to heaven. And so the first thing we do as a Catholic school is we focus on the faith formation of our children and on their parents. That's goal number 1. Yeah, you can clap. That's right. That's what it ought to be, right? So number 2, intellect. We need to raise, strong young men and women. And so we've completely changed the curriculum at these schools. We've only had governance control since July, so we're only 7 months into this. The transformation has been incredible already. So what we've put into place is almost like an artificial intelligence kind of computer model where the children, are being assessed constantly. We're seeing if they're good at reading or bad at reading. What is it? Is it vocabulary? Is it they don't understand word orders? What is it? Phonics? What is particularly, why is this child struggling in reading? And the same thing with math. So we do a lot of assessments almost on a weekly basis to see how well our children are progressing from an academic standpoint, because you've got to be able to read, you've got to be able to do math, and you've got to be smart this day and age to be successful in the world. So we want to do that. Faith, intellect, character. We want to create young men and women of virtue. And so we put in place a virtue curriculum that was developed by the Dominican sisters out of Ann Arbor. And it's a curriculum that I was familiar with at J. Sarah because we have the high school version there. And so we put this virtue curriculum in place, totally transformational. I mean, I, in my life, was never taught virtues. I mean, maybe I learned some along the way. Maybe I picked some up. But, virtue is nothing that is ever really taught. Whoever teaches children about virtue. Hey, let's have a virtue. The virtue of the day is going to be humility or whatever like that. So we got this virtue curriculum in place. And the most important, for me, the most phenomenal thing about teaching virtue is it has almost a bigger impact on the staff, because the staff have never been taught virtues than it does on the children. So now you've got the staff talking about the common virtue of the week. You got it going home to the parents. And so it begins to really just change the whole culture of the school. And then the last one is citizenship. You know, I told you where our schools are located. So most of our children are first or second generation immigrants. They're new to this country. You know, no one's ever taught them civics. No one's ever taught them properly anything about United States history. So that's a key part of what we're doing, is we want them to become great American citizens who understand and love our country. So faith, intellect, character, and citizenship, we've got to focus on each one of those. And Christine, I'm just going to keep going. Is that all right? So we put a curriculum in place for each one of these. So for faith, we're redoing the faith curriculum, and we also we have one of the greatest treasures in the Catholic Church is Father Robert Spitzer, right? You know, Father Spitzer, very, very wonderful man. Father Spitzer's got a curriculum pointed directly towards elementary school. No Catholic school in Orange uses Father Spitzer's curriculum, which is mind-boggling to me, except ours. We now have Father Spitzer's curriculum in our schools, and so we're teaching his curriculum on how children should understand science and faith, because kids today think science is the new religion. So Father Spitzer's like, no, they're both trying to find truth and unity. So let's teach our children how both science and faith are compatible and how they're both trying to find the truth in the world. So our children are learning the Father Spitzer's curriculum. I mentioned to you the virtue curriculum from the Dominican Sisters for the character. For the academic, it's a program called iReady. And so we're getting ready to do our second assessment here in a few weeks, and so we're hoping to see significant improvement. And then our last one is we have a Bill of Rights Institute program that we're using to help teach our kids about what it means to be good citizens. So that's our curriculum. This is our focus. This is our mission. We have a very strong. Our board is primarily business people, so a real strong focus on operations and metrics. So Dr. Christina Arellano has really very, very specific goals on what enrollment ought to be. And so our goal is we want to grow our enrollment at our 5 schools that are open. They're about half filled. And so there's plenty of opportunity to increase the enrollment at our 5 open schools, the ones that I mentioned to you. And then we also have very specific goals on what we're trying to do from an academic improvement standpoint. I can tell you, and this is like a sad thing to say, but I don't know if you guys see the news the other day about how poorly our children are doing academically in math and reading. Have you guys seen all that? Okay, guess what? We're no better. Our schools right now academically are not any better than the public schools in Santa Ana or the public schools in Anaheim. That means we're not good right now. That means we have got to focus on the academics, and that's what she's all about. That's what we're doing. We are focused like little laser beams on math and reading, because we should be better and we're going to be better. So we've got children, just like on the national numbers you've seen, who are 2-3 years behind where they ought to be. And that's just totally unacceptable. I got to be careful what I say because I get too direct. But anyway, it makes me mad to think that we would take these little children and that we would not give them a better education. I mean, what an opportunity we have to create little saints. What an opportunity we have to create, great young men and women of character, of understanding, of intellect and virtue. This is what we need to be doing. So this is what our focus is. So this is why I'm so happy to be doing what I'm doing. One last thing is somebody said to me the other day, we were talking about going to Mass, and Father Angelo said our kids should go to Mass every day. And I looked at him and I'm like, well, that's a great idea. Why aren't they going to Mass every day? So we're starting that at St. Barbara's, which is one of our Catholic. So we're going to start it at St. Barbara's, and then what in the next, we're going to start Lent. So during Lent, we're going to start going, children, our St. Barbara kids, to Mass every day. And then the game plan is that there are 4 schools. We'll start doing that next year. If we're Catholics, the most important thing we do is go to Mass, and so that's what we're going to start doing. So that'll be the most important part of the faith that we can do. So the business model of all this, and this is where it gets really, really hard. Everything I've said up to this point is hard, but the most challenging part is the money side. So it costs us about $8,000 to educate a child in one of our schools right now. Now, compared to the state of California, who knows how much the state costs? Yeah, 26, I've heard 24, 25, 26. So we're educating our children for 1/3 of what the state of California educates their kids for. And part of that is we don't pay our teachers enough money. We need to pay our teachers more money, but just given the current pay scale, it costs us $8,000 to educate a child. And on average, at our 5 open schools, each family pays right around $3,000 in tuition. So we're losing $5,000 financially on every child that we educate. If we have roughly 200 children at each school, 200 kids times losing $5,000 per kid, we lose about $1 million a year at every one of these schools. This is the impediment. This is the problem that we've got to deal with. And so this year, we'll be at about negative $5.5 million because we lose $1 million per school on average. And now we put a little corporate overhead in place. Dr. Christina, she doesn't get paid $500,000, but her staff, that. So we're losing about $500,000. So we're at negative $5.5 million. So this year we're covering it. Bishop Van is extremely generous. So he's investing money in Pax Christi to help us get started. The Orange Catholic Foundation that I'm at, we have some money that's dedicated towards schools, so we're doing that. And then, so after all that, we're about $1 million short. So we had to raise $1 million between now and the end of the year, June. I'm happy to say we've already raised that. So this year we've got it covered. We've already raised a couple, $2 million. There's a huge outgrowth. But the bishop has come to us and said he wants us to open up 2 more schools because we're actually making traction. So the bishop has asked us to open the Immaculate Heart of Mary School in Santa Ana, and then another school that never should have closed, Our Lady of Guadalupe up in La Habra with Father William Golden. So we want to get those open. So, if Lord willing, we'll get both those schools opened up for the 26-27 school year. So our cash needs are just going to continue to go up because we want to open these closed schools. We want to enroll more kids. We want to pay our teachers more. So from like a business standpoint, everything we're doing is just like going to bleed more money, right? So what we need to do is we need to develop a sustainable and a consistent cash flow model to support this. So are y'all with me so far? So great opportunity, great need, but holy cow, do we need money? So what are we going to do? Well, so my first week on the job at the diocese, Suzanne was back in Chicago seeing her family, and so I just that weekend got in the car and started driving around and looking at parishes because I realized I'd never been more to, a few parishes in the diocese. So over the weekend I drove around, looked at all 62 of the parishes that we have. And I thought I was like walking over $1 million bills almost everywhere I went. I've never seen so much underutilized real estate in my life. Like, oh my gosh, this is like an opportunity. I'm a real estate developer, right? So I look at a piece of land and I think, oh boy, what could I do with this, right? So I went back and I started sharing with the bishop a business plan. I said, Bishop, you should never sell another square inch of land because every time you sell land, you wish you hadn't sold it. But what you ought to do is you ought to start entering into land leases with developers and start developing this land. And then you can still own it. And when the land lease is up in 90 years, you can figure some future bishop can decide, does he want to keep it or not? But keep it. Don't sell it, right? So I won't go down this path because I'll get in trouble again. So don't tell the bishop. I'll get fired. But I said, so this is what we ought to do. And so I put together a business plan for him that showed how we would form an entity that would develop rental housing, primarily townhomes. And on most of these parishes, we would develop townhomes on land that was leased from the parish because usually the parish owns the land. So. And I'll give you the example of Our Lady of Guadalupe in La Habra because this is one we're really doing, but it's just, I don't want to get too mathy, but you guys are all smart and you might find this interesting. So they have and what we found, so the first thing I did is I looked at every parish and I just got like a database to see what's the general plan and what the zoning is. Where could you already build houses because it's already allowed by the city. And believe it or not, a lot of our parishes have zoning that would allow development. So one of the best ones was up in La Habra with Father William Golden. And so they have 3 acres in the back. And so it was already approved for 21 units, but no one ever built them. And so we're now going to be building 21 townhomes on this worthless piece of property that they've owned for 70 years. And the way the math is going to work is we're forming an entity to build these townhomes, and that entity is going to pay the parish $200,000 a year for land they've got nothing on forever. And that's about 1/3 of their budget because it's not a very wealthy parish up there. So they're immediately going to get $200,000 for land they got nothing on. Then we're going to go build these 21 townhomes. And when these 21 townhomes get built, the NOI, the net operating income, the revenue from that is going to go to Pax Christi to support our schools. And initially that'll be about $1 million a year. And so that's going to grow over time as the rents go up. And so taking a worthless piece of property, we're going to be able to turn it into gold for Father William and then some gold for Pax Christi. And there's a whole bunch of complicated tax structures in this thing that I don't want to get into now. If you want to come talk to me about it later, I'll tell you. But the people who are involved up front in building these units, are basically going to invest money, and a few years later they'll get tax credits back for everything invested. So it's a beautiful structure. A guy named John Pfeiffer, who's an attorney from Notre Dame and now works at Brown Estrella, he's done this before. So we've been through all the hoops. We're actually pulling all the legal documents together to do this. And we'll start building these townhomes at La Habra in December of this year, working with Farmers and Merchants Bank to get a loan. Shea Home Builders is going to build the homes. Western National is our property manager. I mean, this whole thing is like ready to go, and this is going to really happen. And so this is our first one, and we have 5 other ones that we're working on. So, you know, when you throw all this together, we're looking to generate a lot of income off what today is just worthless, underutilized land that we own. You know, the largest private landowner in the world is the Catholic Church. But we never take a look at this stuff as being an asset that we should do something about, right? When I talk to these school people about the closed schools, they'd be like, oh, yeah, you know, we got closed schools, we got to maintain them. I'm like, you people looking at this wrong. Every educational entrepreneur, the biggest impediment they have is finding a school, right, Chris? Chris works with the community school. And here we have closed schools, and we're whining about closed schools. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're looking at this wrong. Don't whine about that. It's a great asset. You've got a building, you've got zoning, you've got conditional use permits. Let's go get these schools ramped up. So anyway, so we're going to do this real estate thing, and it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen now, and it's going to generate a lot of cash flow. And there'll be time for questions. I know I talk fast, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you. But the other thing that we're doing, and this is, you know, this is an opportunity for all of you. I'm not trying to raise money. I'm just giving you an opportunity. You know, we talked about this great transfer of wealth, and there's so much opportunity in this transfer of wealth. But there's downside to this transfer of wealth, because guess who puts most of the money in the offering plate every Sunday? It's us, right? It's people 55 and older, which I'm one of. And so when our generation passes on, there ain't got to be so much money going in the offering plate anymore. So as a church, we need to be thinking about this, right? And so I told you what we need to do is we need to quit just asking for cash. We need to start asking for appreciated assets. And so one of the things that we're doing now at the Orange Catholic Foundation is, of course, if you wanted to write me a check, I'll take your check. But what I really want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about your stock. I want to talk to you about your house. I want to talk to you about your IRA distribution that maybe you don't need. Just to give you an example, we're doing work with one of the parishes who is trying to raise money to build a new church. Last year, in 2023, they got 2 stock donations totaling $20,000. We went down, explained this to the pastor. This year, they got almost 20 stock donations totaling almost $1 million. And so the last thing you should ever do, don't sell your stock to write me a check, because you're going to pay capital gains tax. Give me your stock. I'll take it to the farmers merchants. I'll let them sell it. Either you can give me 40% less, or I'll get 40% more. I don't want you to. I want you to do all that. So, and the other thing that we're really doing is a lot of estate planning. You know, it's you get to a certain point in your life, and hopefully you get enough money. And it's like, all right, then you got this question: well, how much money do my children need? How much do I give them? Do I ruin their life? Who's going to get this? And so, no, really, right? I mean, these rich kids who have all this money, and all they do is they turn into delinquents, right? I mean, you all know people like that. I've got friends who have given too much money to their children. And so it's like estate planning. I mean, a percentage, and I don't know what it is, of all of our estates ought to go to the church. And I'm not saying we're in the church. It should go to your parish. It should go to a school you like. It should come to CHRISTI. It should go to the OCF. It should go someplace. I'm not here to tell you exactly where to give it, but I'm just saying as Catholics, we should be thinking about that. And when you ask most people why they have never done that, you know what the answer is? No one ever asked me about this. Okay, so I'm not asking because I'm not here to raise money, but I'm telling you that this is an opportunity that you really need to look into, because none of these assets are ours. They were given to us by our Lord, and we do have some obligation to give them back. And I'm not here to preach you and tell you how much that ought to be. But Anthony, would you come up here just for a minute? I wasn't really planning on doing this, but he's back here, and he's the guy who knows more. But I can say the words. He actually knows how to do it. You want to just introduce yourself for a minute, and then we'll just take questions?
Sure. Sure, thank you, Steve. Just about a year and a half ago, I was happy at Merrill Lynch before Steve came knocking, and my life was very good. But every day in Orange County, a business owner or a wealthy family walks into a Merrill Lynch or financial planning office and says, I'm planning to sell X. I'm planning to sell my real estate, I'm planning to sell my business, I'm going to have a big tax year. Come up with ideas. this happens every day. But we, as Catholics, will go through this process and we'll never ask for help. What is out there? What's going on? The devil is afraid of Catholics actually getting organized. You realize we're 1.3 million Catholics in Orange County. 1.3 self-professed Catholics in Orange County. That's a third of the county. If we all turn and look the other way, we would change the direction of this county. But we have to work together. We have to get the knowledge. We have to ask. We got to work within ourselves. Other faith communities outside the Catholic Church do this and do it well, and you know who they are. They work together. So what is it that they're doing? Well, it's very simple. If I told you that if you could divert some of the tax money that you're going to pay anyways, but bring it to your favorite charity, would you be interested? The answer is always yes. You want to give it to, is this being recorded, Gavin? No one says that. So then I say, well, what if I could save you a little tax and then divert some of the other to your favorite charity? Would you do that? They're like, sold, where do I sign? Now, not everybody does these plans, but I'll tell you, someone who is in this room is very good at doing this, but he doesn't promote himself. It's my friend JP. So, guess what? We have to learn to work together. We have to understand whenever we're doing this whenever someone says, hey, I'm going to have a peak tax year, I'm going to be paying a lot in taxes, talk to someone. Now, are there questions about that? Because I saw a lot of hands and ladies hitting their husbands and all of that. So, not to call you out, what does she want you to do, sir? Oh, no. All right, do you want an example?
Sure.
Okay, let me give you an example. This was a widow, didn't have kids. Her and her husband used to always go up to the mountains to their second home, their vacation home. Husband had died for a while, and she's like, I'm never going to go up to Big Bear again. I'm going to sell this property, and I'm going to bless the church with $150,000. Well, if someone comes to tell you that, what do you say? You say, thank you very much, and God bless you. But if she had come to us before she did this, let's do a little math. Property was worth $1 million. Let's just say the cost basis was 0, just to make the math easy. And she had no debt on it. She sells it. Now, one of the things people forget about capital gains is they forget not only is the top rate 20% for Fed, that's all people think about, but it's 3.8% net income tax. They forget that. Secondarily, you forget you're in one of the most expensive states. Is this being recorded again? I forgot.
Don't worry about it.
No, okay. One of the most expensive states in the country. Our top rate is 13.3% for capital gains. Add those two together, it's almost like ordinary income tax. So if she would have sold that, she would have paid $400,000 in tax, which she did. Now, she donated $150. God bless her for that. Had she come before, did you know that this church, OCF, can own fractional shares of a property? So what does that mean? Well, prior to sale, had she donated a percentage of the property, let's say 40% of the property to the church, and then together we went to sell, now she's bypassed 40% of that capital gain. Her donation is the fair market value of that gift, which is $400,000. And she has a $400,000 deduction that she gets to use first year plus 5 more years. So her gift of $150 actually turns into $400,000 without giving more. It's just about being smart. It's just about talking to people. Guess what? At OCF, we don't charge. You don't pay us for a consultation. You still go to your advisors. You still go to JP or whomever you're using and use them. We're going to give you ideas. We're going to help you organize so that if you're a business owner or a wealthy family, or if you're not, there's so many things you can do, even if, God bless you, you need that money, but you're looking for income. You can still benefit and bless the church. So That was an example.
Great. Anthony, thank you. So I just want to wrap it up and say that, I mean, there's so many opportunities and so many things that we're doing, right? If you take a look at, what we're doing with Pax Christi, trying to totally transform Catholic education in our diocese, and we're on the right path to do that. If you take a look at real estate, we're going to try to use the assets that our Lord gave us and not let them just sit there and grow weeds, but how can we generate income that's going to go support the ministries of the church? And then how do we help you as our Catholic brothers and sisters plan wisely as to how you give money? And again, I don't care where you give it to. I hope it just goes to the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church could be your parish. It could be any Catholic ministry you like. It could be the Santiago Retreat Center. You decide where the money goes. We just want to help you be good donors and get the tax benefits you ought to get.
Steve, before I let you go,
Oh my gosh.
we have a tradition here with the First Friday Fires dating back to 1959. These are collector's items, so thank you and the Orange Catholic
Wow.
Foundation for being here, for everything that you do. You're a brother friar now.
Thank you.